Welcome to the Nature Newsroom. I'm Alejandro Alba, hosting correspondent for Now This News. And today we're going to talk about transport. More specifically, we're going to be talking about natural rubber. And joining us now is Stefano Savi. He is the director for the Global Platform for Sustainable Natural Rubber. Thank you so much for joining us, Stefano. Let's talk about the connection between natural rubber and deforestation. What is GPSNR doing to kind of make that whole process more sustainable?
Thank you, and hi Alejandro, and thank you for having me, and hi everyone. So yes, GPSNR is an organization that was set up about 3 years ago, and we now represent about 50% of the global natural rubber traded volume, with our members. And we have members that are coming from all of the supply chain, from the smallholders producers, the processors, the traders, the tire makers, and the end users, as well as civil society organizations that are looking at the issues linked to natural rubber sustainability. All of these actors are part of the platform. And since the inception of the platform, we've worked a lot on basically creating a level playing field on what are the expectations, what is the definition of sustainability in natural rubber. And this is what companies are now pledging to. So companies that become members of GPSNR, they pledge to have rubber that is not impacted negatively on forest and ecosystems, and have rubber that is equitable, as well as being good for the people that are working in the supply chain.
Now, last week you called for support for world leaders in the rubber agroforestry field. What are you looking for to come out of COP26 that could align with your mission?
Yes. So for those who don't know, agroforestry is basically an approach to agriculture where you switch away from having a monoculture, so only one crop cultivated in the field, but having multiple crops and what they call as intercropping being merged together. And this gives an opportunity for, not only from an environmental perspective, because you have an environment that is more prone to get biodiversity back into the system, but also and especially for smallholders that are looking at agroforestry system in their work, because this gives a chance for a diversification of income. And this is a big issue. We've seen it with the crisis, especially in the last year on COVID, where prices have been going down, and with the disruption of supply chains, it's been difficult for smallholders to make a living only out of natural rubber, that having agroforestry can give additional sources of income to smallholders. And specifically here at COP, we're looking at basically increasing the footprint that GPSNR can have with the work that we are already starting in Thailand, in Indonesia, in Cote d'Ivoire with agroforestry projects, and really looking for funding and support from anyone from the industry or governments who's willing to support us in this work.
And now, when it comes to some of the announcements that came out of last week, how will Glasgow's declaration on forestry and land use affect the rubber industry?
Well, I really hope that we're going to see something bigger and much stronger in the next days. Coming out of Glasgow with the cover statement now being most due. I think we really need to see our leaders, going with the torch and bringing us all together to ensure that we meet the SDGs and we meet the pledges that were drafted and agreed upon also in the previous COPs. What I think we can do from GPSNR is to give people a chance, one of many chances, to really look at on-the-ground solutions, for the items that have been discussed. I think natural rubber is a great commodity. There's a great potential for carbon sequestration already when it's done in a traditional way, but especially if it's done sustainably, and if it is ensured to not convert ecosystems. And this is where GPSNR is looking for. And agroforestry is an additional opportunity that we have in ensuring that both from an environmental and a social perspective, we can have an agriculture that is more keen on supporting humans as well as supporting the planet that we live on.
And speaking of kind of local communities and supporting humans, you work with a lot of indigenous communities. And it seems like this COP, they're being more included and more represented. Do you feel like that's the case? Do the people that you work with feel represented and like they're actually collaborating with them?
Well, I think that inclusivity is important, but it's important especially when people have expertise and methods to share. Yeah, and I think this is where inclusivity is especially important on the solutions that we're finding on the ground, and where organizations like GPSNR that have and are starting to work on the ground really need to be inclusive. And doing this with all the stakeholders that locally are working on solutions. I think it's never a good idea to have solutions decided in ivory towers, yeah, and then try to implement those solutions with stakeholders that were not aware of what is happening. Yeah. So this is what we're trying to do in GPSNR. I hope that COP will be doing the same, but especially that whatever are going to be these decisions, as inclusive as they might be, that people are going to follow through, especially with the financing, yeah, of these solutions that have been agreed upon. Because we've seen this being an issue, yeah, in the negotiations in these days. We see this being an issue not just at COP, but in general on all the activities that we see around sustainability, especially in agricultural commodities. Yeah, we need this finance to come up front before we expect people to give results on the ground. Yeah.
And so while we wait for funding, what is it that is being done and from, without any resources that local communities have been doing that you've helped? That makes sense.
Yeah, well, there's already some funding. Yeah, there's some funding from our members. We have funding from donors as well, and we are starting these projects this year. Yeah, as I was mentioning before, in Thailand, in Cote d'Ivoire, and in Indonesia, where we're looking at diversification of income, good agricultural practices for farmers. Yeah, we're looking also at setting up nurseries that will allow farmers to have access to good planting material, which is very important for ensuring the yields are good enough to give farmers a good livelihood. Yeah, but of course the scaling of this is very important, and we don't have so much time to ensure that our systems, our supply chains are really sustainable, and this will need scaling up. And for scaling up, we need support of all partners that can chip in for sure.
And now you kind of touched on this a bit already, but what is kind of your call to action for people seeing this segment right now, whether it's political leaders or civil society?
Yeah, thanks for asking me that. I think we're open to speak to anyone who's willing to chip in and is willing to contribute. So please do reach out to myself. You can email GPSNR. The email is very easy, info@gpsnr.org. Or there's a colleague of mine, Aidan Mock, who's present at COP. If you are at COP in person, so please go and find out what we're doing and get involved. This is really the call for action. Natural rubber is an important commodity. One of the potential new ways of looking at this in a more sustainable way is this agroforestry idea that we're setting in place, and I hope that everyone can get involved.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it, and thanks. Enjoy the rest of COP26.
Thank you, Alejandro. Thank you for having me.